Let me try this input. Do we have audio, folks? I think we have audio. So for those of you who are just joining this video, I just did 9 minutes without any audio. So yay me. Um, trying. So we're about to talk about emotional trends, and my emotional trend has something to do with audio being a problem. Talk about coping with fatigue. So I'm going to just ask if we have any echoes, if we have anything. Yes, Lauren, thank you for coming back. Thank you for your patience, and I am happy to be here. We're just going to go with the setup. Okay. So we're talking about emotional trends. This is what I'm seeing out as I'm talking with clients, as I'm talking with HR developers and our leaders. And the other day, Tracy, she knows who she is, who is an HR exec, she asked me, what are the trends? And I rhymed off a few on the moment. And I'm like, oh, right. I talk about this all the time, but I've never positioned it like that. And I think what's so important is if that we have the trends, then we can be looking for ourselves and we can be noticing what's happening within our team and hopefully trying to find ways in order to address that. So let's pull up, I have a document here that I have created that I will sort of work through, and then I'm going to post this as an article. So stay tuned. The first emotional trend is one that I think we can all relate to. It is called coping fatigue. And this is the exhaustion from continually having to be resilient. It's when you feel like there is just too much on your plate and you can't take one more thing. And I think a lot of us have felt this way or can relate for sure. I know I definitely can. Oh, that's great. I'm so glad. And again, Greg, you're one of the people I want to thank for your coming back and your patience on here. So I'm grateful. And this concept of coping fatigue is about the accumulation of issues. It ends up being like this anxiety that something else is going to go wrong. And you'll hear people say things like, I'm done, I can't take one more issue. And the truth is, you can. There's hope. Now, you may not like it, but you're going to keep going. And I think the problem with this is like, it's like there's just too much. It's not how humans were built. We were not built to be able to withstand the level of change and challenge and personal struggle that each of us has faced as like over the course of the last 2 years, right? Because people were already at their wits end when we were in like pre-pandemic, and now here we are. Are we at the endemic? Are we calling this? And Liliana is saying I can relate 100%. And yeah, like I think we all can. And I know I can for sure. So the risk with coping fatigue is I see this as a precursor to burnout, or it could be a symptom of. So if you start having conversations and you notice people saying things like, I can't take one more thing, I'm done, just that's like, oh, wait a second. And the biggest way to fix this is we need to look at each issue individually as opposed to the collective. I'll tell you, it takes a lot of emotional discipline to be able to apply the appropriate emotion to the appropriate issue at hand. Now, it's not easy because the most powerful emotions will overshadow all of the other emotions that we have, and it can cloud the potential for good or seeing the wonderment in the world or finding joy and peace in the midst of all of the chaos. So, with coping fatigue, I think the I'm just going to look here at my notes of like all the things that are going to be in the article. You're going to get a sneak peek, but it's this waiting for the next shoe to drop. And it makes it really hard to be in the present moment to really sink into what you're focusing on in this exact moment. Now, one solution for coping fatigue, and again, this requires a lot of emotional discipline and desire for personal development, and you can do it, is to look at the habits that may be causing you extra destructive stress in your life that are just the patterns of human experience. Now, in my book, move it over here, I have 31 of these patterns identified. So there are things like worrying. If you are worrying for the next shoe to drop, you know what you're going to do? You're going to make it harder to deal with whatever shoe drops, right? And then you don't even have the capacity, because it's being used up in the potential of the future. You don't have the capacity left over to deal with what's happening right now. Oh, okay, we've got a note here. I do think Lauren said, "You're right. I do not think I have ever felt this tired, beat up. At least I do not remember feeling like this." And you are not alone. You're absolutely right, because it's just the accumulation. Our brains are not built for this. And we haven't had a reprieve. And for those people who are like, okay, we're getting to endemic, it's like, oh my gosh, we might be able to get back to normal. Yeah, there's no going back. There's no life that we know without knowing what we know with COVID, right? Like it's just a new world for how we're showing up. But I think that if the one solution I would recommend with this is find out what habits are intensifying your coping fatigue. So as I mentioned, I have 31 of them. There are a lot more, I'm sure, but like being pessimistic. So I've had to call somebody out in my life on this. I'm like, gosh, you're always seeing the worst case scenario before it even happens. Like, we don't know what's going to happen. And so, really just seeing that, like, it's not helpful. Being past focused. Oh, I can't wait till we go back to normal. I just want to get back to the way it was. Like I said, not going back. All of those things can actually add a layer to our coping fatigue. So find one that you think is prevalent in your life and work to alleviate that. You can do that by applying my problem solving framework, which of course you can find in the book, Take Back Your Weekends. All right. The next emotional trend, which is interesting because I don't know if people recognize what this is. And by the way, I've made it up. So, you know what? That's probably because, and maybe I haven't made it up. I don't know. But here's what I'm calling it. I am calling it the collective heaviness. It's like there is a lot happening on the world stage that will make your blood boil, right? If you turn on the news and you get lost in the drama, it's going to make it really, really, really tough to have a good day, or to at least have an emotionally strong, positive day. Now, we don't have to be positive like, rainbows and unicorns. We just have to be like, I call it, like me, I consider myself an optimistic realist, right? So it's like, what is, anyway, that's going off another tangent. But if you look at the organization, the collective heaviness it's hard to pinpoint, but you know that something feels off and it feels heavy. Like even the people who are normally your cheerleaders and the ones who inspire the rest of the team to really, get into a good mood, or always are putting their hands up for something. Oh, I'll do that. Yeah, I'd love to. They're not able to do that. Right. And I don't think we can underestimate the severity of how, the threat of a nuclear war, everything that's happening over in the Ukraine. A lot of us use technologies that are based in the Ukraine, where they have teams. And so, 3 or 4 of the technologies that I use are people who are over there, right, who are fleeing. And, so it feels like really connected. Now, the reality is there's war happening in this world all the time, but this has taken over the news cycle. And I think that collective heaviness is exhausting. And so you add that into your own personal fatigue, and then you've got nowhere to go to get sort of revved up or to feel the hope. And so it's up to each one of us to be finding the silver linings in the midst of what we're dealing with in our world, and like in our, day to day, and to potentially limit the amount of news and negativity that's coming into your life, right? That's something each of us can do to just feel a little bit better. It doesn't mean we don't want to be informed. It doesn't mean we want to turn a blind eye. It's just we have to, like, we can be informed by watching one round of the news cycle and not listening to the repeat hour after hour after hour after hour after hour after hour, right? And like, this is the one where I was saying about the emotional discipline and the self-awareness are critical to be able to deal with as a team or as an individual, the collective heaviness. And so really looking at, okay, what am I feeling and what does it apply to? Right? Because if you watch the news and you're concerned with what's happening in Ukraine and you don't feel those feels, if you don't really truly internalize it, lean into it, process them, and give them some allowance to exist and to move and to be, then you're at risk for the next meeting you're going into taking that negative cloud into it, right? And so again, not easy, but definitely is something that I would encourage you to work on if you're feeling this sense of collective heaviness. And if you're feeling that in your like world where everybody around you is also feeling really negative and heavy, then you have to like figure out proactively where you can go to get an infusion of positivity and some hope. And that's why like showing up here to the lift up, awesome. Watching comedians on from years gone by, long before all this stuff happened. That's one of my strategies, right? Getting a few laughs in the bank each day, getting, calling that one friend who can always see something that's really positive for you, right? Like adding that in and proactively adding it in instead of just leaving it on default. Okay. So that's the collective happiness or collective heaviness. And it's very sneaky because it just brings down the vibe without any pinpoint to why the vibe is down. Okay. Any questions about that? Oh, I watched Emily in Paris. So did I. I totally did. And you know what? Total ridiculous fun and um, levity, right? In the midst of it all. So good for you. These are the things we need to do to find a way to be okay when things are not okay. All right. The third emotional trend that I am seeing is workload anxiety, overwhelm, and the resulting guilt. This is, am I seeing Stella got her groove back? Do you know, I'm going to admit, I've never seen it. Took my mind out of the mess. Exactly. And, a little escapism into something that's fun and positive and doesn't make you think too hard is a really great way to rise above that collective heaviness, because it's so heavy that we have to be able to combat it by lighting, right? So we have to lift ourselves up or we're going to get sucked down. That's just how it works. All right. Any other questions about collective heaviness as the second emotional trend? Because we will move on to third. As I was saying, the third is workplace anxiety or workload anxiety, overwhelm, and the resulting guilt. This is not about having too much work to do. This is the emotional reaction to having too much to do. And so what this is showing up as is when people are trying to take that much needed time to rest, recharge, reset, add your and whatever you want it to be, they are so tied and thinking in the back of their mind about everything that needs to get done at work that they can't sink into the relaxation. And that's a problem, because I was going to say as a professional, it doesn't matter. As a person, as a human experience, a human being having an experience, we If you don't reset, if you don't recharge, there is no way for you to sustain that long term, which means that your productivity, your effectiveness, your perspective, your ability to change, solve problems is all is diminished. Like, if we can't fix this, I like, people think there's a big great resignation going on right now. Oh, just wait. Like, I'm having people, and many people, saying to me, I can't take a vacation. Why not? Well, because one person in particular said, because I have so much work and my colleagues are so burned out, how would I ever think about leaving and putting my work on them to pick up my slack for the week? This is a problem. And if we even add into that, like, I can't go on vacation. Well, you can't get away because of all the rules and everything like that. So I rolled my eyes. I'm so done with COVID, as you can imagine. I'm like, yeah. I want to go on a trip. Um, but this emotional tie to that thing that needs to get done, and this long to-do list, is basically a recipe for putting you into the burnout. I love that I left the comment from Laura about Stella getting her groove back the entire time. Just left it up there. Perfect. Because we all got to get our groove back. It was actually quite apropos. So when we think about this, it's like, if our goal each and every day is to get to the end of this to-do list, I got so much to do, I got to do this, and we're chasing completed to-do lists, we're screwed, because it will never end. And if you are not finding a way to emotionally detach from that and trust that the work will stay there tomorrow, and that it's more important for you to fully sink into R&R, you're going to be exhausted. If we want to figure out how do we heal from coping fatigue, how do we combat the collective heaviness, we got to get rid of the guilt associated with our workload and the anxiety. Tracy's got a great comment here. I think it is all setting up expectations at work. Yes. Let people know how long it will take you to complete the task for real. Allow yourself to turn off and totally turn off, put down the phone, get off the computer, etc. And I know, I don't know if I'm allowed to trade what was on your social media, and your profile picture does have you in Mexico. And you did an awesome job of doing exactly that. And you're running a company with so many people on the team, and like in an industry that is so bogged down with regulation and changes and constant activity. And so to be able to say, no, I gotta check out and I'm gonna go and do this, is like huge wins. Totally wins. Okay, Tammy says, I always say to myself, I'm not a brain surgeon and no one is going to die if I don't get back to them right way. It's so true. And even ironically, a brain surgeon has to be able to compartmentalize, and he can't think about all the other brains that he needs to operate on when he's sleeping to recover from the brain that he just operated on. Right? Like, it's the same principle. And, and I know you're using that as an example, and I'm taking it very literally, but it's true. Every one of us didn't or do not has to deal with this. Okay, if I didn't leave on vacation, I would not be any good for the office. The burnout was real. Yes. And this is the thing. It's like like, all the power to these employees who do not want to take time off, who are working late at night and working on the weekend to get caught up and causing themselves this extreme amount of destructive stress. All, like, yay to them, but it's actually going to backfire. Eventually it will backfire. Yeah, very true. That was about the brain surgeons. Okay, let's keep going on to the next one. The fourth emotional trend leaders need to watch out for is Oh, hold on, I got to go back to this. The who care attitude helps too. Yes, and if you have a whole bunch of people who you're working with and they've all decided to check out and go, who cares, right? Then we end up having not a really great productive working environment. So there's a balance there between I care and I care enough about myself that I'm going to allow myself the necessary time to reset and recharge so that I can do an even better job with the thing that I actually care about. It's a balance, like everything in life. All right, fourth and more emotional trend. Ready for this? Return to office resistance. Now, I know that there are many companies that have already been returned to the office. However, there are many that are just now coming out to the fact that, oh, wait a second, we can't stay, or actually, probably could. We don't want to stay virtual forever. We need to get our team back into the office. And there's a lot of like, how do we create this hybrid work environment? And there's this balancing act between the needs of the company, the perception of what it takes to build a really cohesive culture of loyal employees, and what the employees want. Because in this great resignation time, in this time when so many companies are clamoring for the right employees to come into their door, there are a lot of them who are saying, yeah, I'll come work for you. And I don't want to be in the office every day. Now, there are some people who are desperate. They're like, please let me get out of the house. Like they are running so fast to the office and just want to be around their peeps and colleagues and have a change of scenery and just be healthy and live their life at the office. I get it. There are some people like that, but there are a whole bunch of people who have had a 2-year taste of what it's like to be at home, to not have to go through the commute, to not have to wear high heels, right? To not have to put on pants that zipper. I mean, who's with me here, right? Like it's, and I think, so here's the thing. Pre-COVID, nobody even had the inkling, or not nobody, but a lot of people never even had the idea of what would it be like to work from home. It wasn't even a starter, right? Like it wasn't even part of the conversation. And then now we've got this taste. People are like, I think I kind of like it better. Like maybe it's not perfect, but I like it better. My biggest concern with this, actually, no, I'll start with the hope. I believe this is an opportunity for people to redesign their lives. Because my biggest concern with this is that once people start going back to the office, it's going to mean the equivalent of going back to old patterns that didn't work. The reason that for some people, COVID was such a relief, not COVID being a relief, but having to work at home and having that massive shift and interruption in the patterns, why it was so like, right? Like not amongst everything that was going on, but there was an element for a lot of people who I've talked with who were like, oh, wait a second. I'm so happy that I do not have to be a taxi driver for my kids. I am so happy that I do not have to, carpool with those same people. I'm so happy that I don't have to go to events that I don't want to talk to the people, right? Like all of those things that people were relieved to not have to do anymore. My concern is we're just going to like get back caught up into the hamster wheel and run, and then not actually have anything new or more enlightened coming out for our lives in the next phase. That's something that's on my mind as an emotional trend. Any thoughts or comments on that before I go to the last emotional trend that I think we need to be keeping an eye on? So far, for those of you just joining, we've got coping fatigue, collective heaviness, workplace anxiety and overwhelm, and the resulting guilt, right? Not about the workload. It's about the emotional response to the workload. Return to office resistance. And last but not least, only applies to some of the population, but I'm calling it introvert hesitation. Okay, here's why. And for those of you who haven't known me for a long time, I used to teach networking. That's how I started my speaking and training business, and I did that from 2006 to about 2015 when I transferred into teaching resilience and problem solving for the human experience. And when I would teach networking, one of the big conversations was around introverts and how do they connect. So we're going to go into that. But here, I want to go here because I've got a comment. I think one of the next emotional trends would be the shock of returning because I think it would be different. Yeah, except I thought when when I started traveling again, I haven't traveled a whole bunch, but when I did start traveling, it was really weird. Like I was like, oh my gosh, I've got to like pack these things. I didn't have my packing list. I didn't have it all set up. And it was like I went into the hotel and everything came flooding back in terms of habit. I ordered the same breakfast that I order in a hotel all the time. But the thing is, it's not the breakfast that I would choose now that I've been doing that in, with COVID and cooking from home. I would have something very different. But there at the restaurant, I just ordered it, and I'm like, I don't even do that. And like I stopped drinking coffee before COVID, but I still love it every now and again. But I wasn't in the mood for it that day. But I still ordered a coffee, right? And I drank it, and I don't often think hotel coffee is very good and worth it. So, hold on. Greg saying, is there a prize for all of the above? Yes, there is. You get to come to the lift up free of charge and participate with me living all of the above as well. That's the prize. So I think that the habits are going to come flooding back a lot faster than you think they are because it's so ingrained in us. Yeah. Okay, so going back to introvert hesitation. So as I was saying, when like I want to make it really, really clear, introverts are not stereotypically shy or socially inept. Being an introvert is about where do you find your energy? How do you get lit up? So for an introvert, going in and being in boardrooms all day or having to go to events all day is very oh, I had call it 4 o'clock, but that's all right. We'll finish this and then I'll call them back. The that that's draining. And I know this to be true because I am more of an introvert than I am an extrovert. And I know people have a really hard time believing that, but the truth of the matter is I love reading a book. I love going deep quickly. The skills of the introvert, I believe, are they can go deep quickly. I think that's one of them. They don't have a lot of time for superficiality. So all of the hoity-toity going to cocktail parties just doesn't work, right? And so my thinking around the emotional hesitation for introverts is before COVID, introverts had created systems to be successful. They had swung the pendulum in such a way that they could manage. They could go to this event, but they knew how long they could go for and still be okay. They could have the system in place. And with our comfort zones, when we practice and we inch them and we push and we push and we push, then we create a new baseline of where we're comfortable. And I think for a lot of years, introverts who were very successful and had to network and be out in the community created systems to inch their comfort zone so that they had a baseline where they could manage everything that was happening. But with COVID, we have collapsed, right? We've collapsed that muscle and it is atrophied. And so now someone who is introverted and doesn't enjoy going to those things, their comfort zone, their baseline for how they operate has snapped way down in comparison to what it was pre-COVID. And I think that pendulum has swung so much that it's going to be a real emotional struggle and a rev up for people who have introverted tendencies in order to actually come to a new baseline that serves all of their needs for being out and about in the world. So there are my observations of 5 emotional trends for 2022. Now, each of these can be addressed, by the way, with the problem solving framework. And of course, I outline that here and the online program. I go into it quite deeply in terms of dealing with the overwhelming workload. So online program is available, my website /time, TIME. And actually, you know what I'll do? I'll put it in here, in there. Okay. So it'll show up, I think, on YouTube and Facebook. We'll put that comment. I think that's one way to do it. I think awareness is another huge piece of the puzzle, and being compassionately curious with yourself on how you're processing. You know, I know Greg made this cute joke about, is there a prize for all of the above? And the truth is that on any given day, you may feel 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 of all of the above. And if you are leading a team and everybody is potentially going between those different pieces of the puzzle, then I'm going to suggest that something needs to be done if you want to hold on to and retain the people, because especially the one around overloaded workload and the guilt associated with that, that's the one where I see people quitting and just giving up, or dialing it in and not really participating at the level that you really want them to. So there's where I'm at. I am going to sign off on that note. So grateful for those of you who came for the first 9 minutes without audio and then showed back up and stayed for the rest. I'm very grateful. I'm going to delete those videos and we'll just watch this one. But I hope this was helpful, insightful in some way. If it was, please share it with other people. Bring your friends. I normally do this on Mondays at 3:15, and yesterday I just was not available. So hopefully you got the message that wasn't happening. And on that note, I will sign off, and may you stress less, do more, and be happier. Have a beautiful rest of